This is an educational project to provide kids with laptops for schooling. So this is actually a spin-off of MIT, the university in Boston. And Nicolas Negroponte, the director of Media Lab, has been talking about this project for nearly 20 years, until finally the technology was mature enough to provide us with low-cost, affordable, and very robust components to produce this laptop.
Or the idea is really to improve education, so it's really an educational project, not a laptop project. That's a famous quote about the project by Nicolas Negroponte, who was basically the godfather of the whole thing. And I really think if you get people to collaborate, for example, in Uruguay and also Peru, because suddenly they will have the chance to collaborate simply by having this device to also access the internet and whatnot, I think that's certainly a big step towards improving the world, so to say.
So we are expecting to not only create a new generation of kids that had better education, but also retroactively give some education to the families. For some children where this project has been piloted, this was the brightest light in their houses. And the software has been designed based on the educational theories developed in the 60s at MIT again, and by a group of constructionists. Constructionism is a new theory of education that basically says that kids, they learn more by doing things, by exploring things, rather than just being instructed passively. And well, this may seem very obvious to everybody, but school today is still about teaching to kids the passive way. So what this device does actually is putting kids in communication with each other and letting the kids express themselves as much as possible, because constructionism is actually the opposite of notionism, of like memorizing things. There are 5 principles based on which our educational project is based. And the first one being low age. We want kids of very low age to start exploring, because this is the age when you are 5 or 6 is when your brain is more capable of learning. So we don't want to waste those precious years. And the second principle is that we want the kids to own the laptop. We want the kids to take care of it, be responsible, and we want them to take them home to teach their own parents too. And the third principle is saturation. We want all kids in a nation to have the laptops, to have access to the same high-quality education, because education is actually like a vaccine to the ignorance, actually. So you gotta give it to everybody, not just to a few. And well, the fourth principle is constructionism, which I already introduced, and the fifth principle is that we want the laptops to be connected. We want laptops to be connected with each other and to the rest of the world, because we also hope, this is a great expectation, but you can see how obvious it would be. We hope to bring the nationalism barriers down by making kids at very low age interact with each other at long distances too, so that they will know about each other and not hate each other. And these laptops have been tested at very high and very low temperatures. They have been dropped. They have been treated really in extreme ways, because kids are kind of extreme. And we cannot afford to give a little kid a normal laptop with a hard drive and a fragile display. This display is really, really hard to break, and the laptop itself could be very easily slammed and shaked and will not break.
How much energy does the laptop consume?
I think at the moment the worst case scenario is about 7 watts. And as a comparison, I think the Apple iPhone is also rated at 6.9 watts, and that's, the small thing they put into your pocket. So that's very, very low power. And there's also some very clever ideas on how to save energy. For example, if you're reading a PDF document, you often have a very static image for a long time. So what they're currently working on is that you basically suspend the whole computer, you shut everything down except for the display and the display controller that keeps this image static there. And only when you turn the page, so to say, it comes out of suspension, loads the next page, goes down again. Of course, that's not that trivial, so it's work in progress, but there's really, again, some very smart and clever approaches on how to save power and increase the runtime of the unit.
Power devices we were designing, the first few were actually wouldn't work out. For example, the first design we had done had a crank right here attached to the laptop. Then we realized that it is really inconvenient to use the laptop while you're also cranking, and it was really naive. But unfortunately, that went into the imagination of people, and for some reason it was a message that people liked, the laptop with the crank. So everybody's still asking us, like, where's the crank? And they're very deluded when they know that there is no crank attached to the laptop. There is actually an external one, because here is an AC adapter, and you can connect it to the AC at the wall, but you can also add other devices, including a solar panel, which is the one I would use the most in countries that have enough sun for that, and it works very well and it's very low cost. I'm talking about like $12 per solar panel, and it provides 5 watts to the laptop, which is a lot. It lets you charge the battery in a matter of hours. And where there is not enough sun, we also have the crank, as I was saying, or other devices, one of which being a pedal. And you can use your feet, which are much stronger than the arms. And these things actually came out as a result of our research, unexpected results actually.
One of the nice things, for example, doing in India is to have a so-called cow power generator. So it's just like the mills in Europe used to work. You've basically got a small generator, and you've got cows connected to that go in circles, and they power the whole thing. Or another idea is, for example, if you are in a school and you have a playground, you have a roundabout or something, yeah? You could hook a generator to that, and then while the children actually play, they actually produce power for that. So I think there's some very clever and smart approaches there again.
This is a nice application written by a volunteer developer. It's called Speak.
I'm a little cute laptop.
It's supposed to teach very little children how to type and how to spell correctly in their own language.
Okay, so the idea of this computer, and especially the user interface in terms of software, was really to make this machine very accessible to children, and also to children who live in a very different social context. So if you think about the metaphors and symbolism that we often use to work with computers, files, folders, that's all from office automatization, because that's what computing used to be at the beginning. Yeah? And whether all those metaphors are still the best way to teach a 6-year-old kid in Peru or Mongolia how computer works, personally, I doubt it. So, for example, instead of having files and folders and saving and loading, what we have here, if I may show you, is something that's called the journal. The journal is basically a diary of all the activities, what you've been doing. And what you can also see here, for example, here I've been collaborating with one of my colleagues. You can search for the things, you can filter it. So it's basically a much more natural, in my opinion, way of interacting with the computer. Because if I write something, I can just put it on a piece of paper, put it to the side, and I can resume the next day. I can resume a week later or a year later. So it's a very different way of interacting with the computer. What's also important is that we've got this so-called zoom metaphor. So we've got basically 4 views of this machine. What we have here is the so-called home view. I've got a representation of myself, of all the running activities, a list of the installed activities, so installed software, and I can see the 4 different views which are represented up here and also here on the 4 keys. So this one to the right here is the running activity, so to say. This one is the so-called home view, where I can have this overview. Here I've got the so-called friends view, where I can add my friends and I can then invite them to do something. Let's invite them to write something or draw or whatever. And here I've got the so-called network view, where I can see all the other XOs. That's the name of the laptop, because that's what it looks like, an X and an O. And you can also see that, for example, here another laptop is writing on a text document, and I can just click on that and resume and collaborate. So we can instantly write together, we can play together, we can exchange documents, we can exchange photos that we've made with the camera. So collaboration is really also at the core of the software on this laptop here. Personally, I think that education is probably one of the best approaches to work against poverty and to work against digital divide. And personally, I think this is probably one of the, if not the most ambitious education project that's currently running or currently available. And so I thought, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to contribute my spare time and my energy into that. And for that reason, we founded a group of people in Austria, in Vienna. It's OLPC Austria. We're currently 10 to 15 people from technical background. Personally, for example, I'm a computer science student. We've got people who work on the educational side of the things, media artists, and basically what we try to do is contribute to this effort in whatever way deemed useful. So one of the things we've been doing is writing software, preparing content. We've been in a lot of IT events like CeBIT. We're also here today. And we also talk a lot to the media, like now, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and misconceptions and misunderstanding about the project. And basically try to talk to people and also show them the laptop. And what's really nice about the whole thing, something that we've often also heard today, is everybody says, yeah, I've heard about this project, I've read about it for 2 years in newspapers, and now I can finally touch it. And then you realize it's not just a project and a vision and idea, it's actually something is getting done and something very, very cool.
So the project has been under development for almost 3 years, and there is a core team of, let's say, 20 developers and growing. And there is a larger group of volunteers of maybe 300 software engineers, plus many more translators and content providers and educators. So I would estimate the participation to the project to be around 3,000 people probably. And then we are involving governments too. We want universities to be able to work with us. And this is why the whole thing is open, and open as in open source, and open as in open collaboration between international institutions such as universities and ministries of education. We want all these researchers to join together and produce the most terrific content ever done for any primary school education. Well, we are looking for collaboration of any kind. We're looking for more educators, we're looking for developers, software developers, hardware developers. Any kind of support is really, really appreciated. We have plenty of translators and grassroots groups who happen to like the project and are trying to show the project to their nationals or to their governments. This is really useful to us because we are still a small charity. We are a non-profit, so any help is appreciated. Oh, you should see, they love it. They smile the moment they see it. You cannot get back your laptop once you give it to them, and it is really hard to get a kid to stop playing with a laptop because they get interested right away. They start working on it, and when they discover that they can work with the other kids too, well, there is a very interesting social interaction. After a while, one of them will say, like, let's do that, and they will decide together to create something complex which requires the joint effort of multiple kids. Ministries all over the world are experimenting it already, and some teachers have expressed interest in testing it themselves, so we started pilots everywhere. And, we have seen how the kids are usually much faster than their teachers learning. And so while the teachers are asking us for documentations, actually their pupils, they're learning, and they're then teaching to their teachers what they have learned. So we see an inversion, which is wonderful, actually, because the teacher now is receiving education rather than just giving it. Of course, it's bidirectional, which needs to be for the constructionist model. We want the teacher to be a player among the kids. Of course, a player with more experience, a player who already knows how to read, write, and do maths. So, a crucial one. But we think that the communication between the kids is as important as the communication with their teacher. We had the fear that other laptop producers, they would have tried to obstacle us once they have realized that we were going to make a better laptop for a very lower price. But actually what happened is that they started designing lower cost laptops and smart laptops like ours with the same technology right away, which actually means that, yes, some people say we have competition, but the reality is that we are getting closer and closer to giving one laptop per child, which is actually our goal. We're not up to sell laptops. We are an educational project, so the more we have other companies working on it, the better for everybody.
A non-profit organization developed the project so-called one laptop per child. We have also to think about the definition of the poverty. We think the poverty is you don't have enough to eat, you don't have money and so on. But I think that the educational part of poverty is very important. Poverty can have different aspects, and the poverty is if you cannot, you don't have access to the knowledge, you don't have a laptop, or you don't have electricity, you are not able to buy a book and so on. And via such, I would say, laptops, you can get books in a different way, and knowledge, because these laptops were developed first of all to get to offer people education.